So thank you all for being here. I am going to present my study titled The Gift of Counseling, a quantitative exploration of vicarious resilience and wellness among mental health counseling. So to get started, I would like to thank all of you for being here. Dr. Lyons, Dr. Tazias, thank you so much for your patience, your dedication throughout this time, and then my friends and family. This research I dedicate to three people, the women detained at Rikers Island, whose my time with them showed me human resilience, even in the times such as being detained at Rikers, my great-grandmother Alice, and then my grandmother Ophelia. This afternoon, we will start from the background, a little background of the study, look at the results, discuss the implications, and then end with limitations. So during 2017 and 2020, I worked with a program called the Criminalized Survivors Program at Rikers Island. During that time, it was a very challenging time. At the same time, I was exposed to human resilience. I was exposed to people who were detained and yet find ways to connect with their families, find ways to celebrate each other's birthdays, milestones. So it got me thinking, what is really happening here? That even though this work is very traumatic, it is also very rewarding, and human triumph and resilience can be seen in this way. So I looked into the research, and majority of the things that I was seeing were vicarious trauma, burnout, compassion, fatigue. There wasn't really a focus on these positive aspects that counselors are exposed to in their work. And then the ACA Code of Ethics also encourages counselors to always monitor for impairment and to engage in self-care practices as well. So this led to this study. The purpose of this study was really to explore whether the experience of vicarious resilience predict wellness, overall wellness of mental health counselors in the U.S. In this study, vicarious resilience is the exposure to client resilience and positive attributes that lead to positive and inner transformation and outcomes for mental health counselors. So it's really about counselor wellness, ways to improve and build on counselor wellness. I use the ecological theory to conceptualize trauma, resilience, the counseling relationship, and wellness. So from that, I developed this conceptual framework to place the counseling relationship in this environment where there is reciprocity, where trauma isn't the only thing happening, but also there is resilience. And the counseling relationship is also benefiting for both the client and the counselor. I used a quantitative approach for the study. The participants were mental health counselors. The instruments included vicarious resilience scale, the perceived wellness survey. It started with informed consent. Then there were 13 demographic questions, 3 attention check questions spread throughout. And so as the participants finish with the survey, the informed consent, they come to the vicarious resilience scale, and then they will come to the perceived wellness survey. For data analysis, I use bivariant correlations and then linear regressions. The research questions that guided the studies were these 3. What are the associations between the 7 subscales of the vicarious resilience scale and the 6 subscales of the perceived wellness survey? The second one is, how does a self-reported vicarious resilience predict overall wellness in mental health counselors? And then the third one is, does a higher score on the experience of self-awareness and self-care practices, subscale of the vicarious resilience subscale, predict higher levels of wellness among mental health counselors? So here are the results. We will start with demographics. I had 1,612 respondents. Out of that, I eliminated it to 86. The elimination was based on first, majority of the people that filled out the survey were medical professionals. They were not mental health counselors. So after that elimination, the next one was unresponsive answers or incomplete responses. I eliminated that. And then the third one was based on the attention check questions. So that led to the final participants of 86 mental health counselors. Out of these 86, majority of them identified as whites, and then followed by Black and African American. This is consistent with the data from Bureau of Labor Statistics and Zipper.com. Some key findings here. Majority of the participants revealed that they worked in private practice. 98% of them disclosed that they worked with trauma-focused clients. And this leads back to the introduction and the problem that counselors are bound to encounter clients who have experienced some form of trauma in their work. 70% of counselors identify that they are familiar with vicarious resilience. Now, the specific 6 skills. Vicarious resilience yielded a Cobric alpha of 0.80, a mean of 97. So this is in the medium levels of vicarious resilience. The medium levels is between 76 and then 98. And that means that the counselors who were the participants, they did identify or they did experience some sort of vicarious resilience. However, they were not using it in their day-to-day, or they may not have identified ways to use it. For the perceived wellness survey, the Cobric alpha was 0.79 and a mean of 13.9. Now with the perceived wellness survey, there isn't high, medium, or low levels. It is perception. So it is to give a participant a perception of how they are faring when it comes to wellness in these 6 sub-skills and the 36 items. So it gives them an idea so that they can think about it. Are there ways that they need to improve upon? For research question 1, for the bivariate correlation, there were significant associations between the 7 subskills of the vicarious resilience skill and the 6 subskills of the perceived wellness survey, specifically 6 out of the 7, with the exception of increased consciousness around social location and power having no correlation with any dimensions of wellness. And this could be due to the fact that maybe having an increased consciousness around social location, power, privilege, oppression could be tasking on counselors or could be stressful for individuals who are very conscious around that. In terms of the linear regression, vicarious resilience skill was a moderate predictor of scores on the perceived wellness survey. Overall, it was a 12% variance in overall wellness. So this finding supported hypothesis 2 that higher levels of vicarious resilience predict a higher level of wellness among mental health counselors. Now, 12% may seem to be low, but in social sciences, human experience is very complex, and there are many different factors that could impact an individual's overall perception of wellness. So 12% could be a starting point. For the subskill of increased self-awareness and self-care practices, it was a moderate predictor of scores on the perceived wellness survey. This yielded a 13% variance in overall wellness. The result here also supported hypothesis 3 that showed that a higher level on the increased self-awareness and self-care practices subskill of the vicarious resilience skill predict higher levels on the perceived wellness survey. And this is also 13%, so this is also a starting point, a piece of the pie when it comes to wellness. For implication, so for implication, I divided it according to the KCREP 5 areas of study. So we are going to start with counselors. With a research such as this, it provides an overview that the counseling relationships, although it can be very stressful, it can have adverse effect, it can also be a mutually benefiting relationship for counselors. Hernandez et al., when they developed vicarious resilience concept, they emphasized that it is not the absence of vicarious trauma, that vicarious trauma and vicarious resilience can coexist, and it can help give counselors a holistic view of the work that they do and holistic view of their client as well. So for clients, they could use the vicarious resilience, for counselors, they could use the vicarious resilience skill as a starting point to think about the dimensions, the questions on it, how are these things in the work that they do every day. And counselors can also focus continual education credits on resilience and vicarious resilience as well. Then when it comes to the counseling practice, counselors can integrate a resilience framework into the work that they do, acknowledging and pointing out the ways in which the client who comes to them, their positive attributes, and the ways in which they are dealing with the day-to-day struggles happening in their work. For client, this strength-based approach, which is resilience framework, can be a great thing for them in that counselors can be a mirror for clients. They can hold a mirror for clients, pointing out and identifying the ways in which clients have survived, or the ways in which maybe they are thriving or coping with things that is happening in their lives. This could give some clients the ability and the motivation to go on to continue in the counseling relationship. One of the principles of the ACU Code of Ethics is social justice, and one of the dimensions of vicarious resilience is increased consciousness around social location and power. So this also gives counselors an opportunity to look at clients from their community, the ways in which their community have resources, the ways in which their communities have survived, and also advocate for them as well. We will talk about advocacy and leadership coming up. So the counseling relationship becomes then a collaborative space for both the counselor and the client, in that counselors can relax a little bit and knowing that their clients are bringing some sort of resilience with them, that they have what it takes to go through what they are going through. Supervision. Supervision is very integral to counselor identity and counselor development. In supervision, supervisors can parallel vicarious trauma with vicarious resilience. They can also model what it means to point out client resilience, client coping skills by pointing out supervisees' resilience, supervisees' coping skills, their strength, the way in which they are navigating their profession as well. Supervisors can use the vicarious resilience skill and the perceived wellness survey as tools, as starting point for conversations in the supervisory relationship. Based on this, supervisees and supervisors can develop an individualized plan for themselves, individualized plan for wellness, individualized plan for learning about vicarious resilience, and coming back to use the skills again to know if there has been any progress made or there has been no progress made. Then supervisors can integrate vicarious resilience and resilience into every aspect of supervision. For teaching, the KCREP standard for lifespan development requires programs to teach lifespan resilience across every aspect of the lifespan. So this can look like, what does resilience look like in infancy, in toddler, in school age children, in young adult, in old age, middle age? What does resilience look like at every point of a person's life? Vicarious resilience skill can also be an instructional instrument and a reflective instrument in teaching. That students can use the skill to reflect on what they need to learn, what maybe isn't in their mind, their blind spot, and ways to grow with that. Vicarious resilience and resilience can also be integrated across every aspect of counselor education. Internship, practicum, lifespan, multicultural and social justice, assessment, program evaluation, every aspect of counselor education. One of the pioneers, I would say, of integrating vicarious resilience into counselor education is this researcher that I don't want to butcher their name, talked about sensing and thinking when it comes to integrating vicarious resilience into counselor education. So that could look like reflective activities, parent students to have discussions with each other, modeling what vicarious resilience look like in the classroom, and then advocacy activities as well. In terms of leadership, the ACA, the CSI, MBCC, ACES, KCREP, they have a great opportunity to look at vicarious resilience and adopt it as part of leadership and advocacy. One of the dimensions of vicarious resilience is increased consciousness around social location and power, and this can give leaders an idea how to look at clients, communities, and family. 12 to 13% variance could be a starting point. It's part of the pie, it's not the whole. However, it could be a starting point for leaders when they are developing programs for counselor wellness, programs for retention, program to sustain people in the field. The ACA had a task force on impaired counselors. They can also adapt this to use it to build counselor wellness and to sustain counselors in the field. This research filled a gap in the literature. However, it doesn't provide all the information. It gives a starting point to think about the positive transformation that could happen in the work that counselors do every day. However, there is more that needs to be done. This more can include developing and validating additional psychometric tools specifically for counselors. Hernandez et al., when they developed vicarious resilience and the vicarious resilience skill, they developed it for the work that they do, and their work primarily focuses on political torture clients, and so that is what they use, and it also, some of it was done in Colombia. So counselor researchers have a great opportunity to specifically focus on counselors and develop and validate psychometric tools specifically for counselors. Longitudinal studies can track counselor trainees right when they are in school and to see how vicarious resilience evolves over time, maybe 10 years into the field, maybe 5 years into the field, maybe when they become counselor educators, when they become supervisors. It can track to see what is really happening there to give more information to this, and then finding ways to integrate this into pedagogical and supervisory strategies as well. Now, the specific dimension of increased consciousness around social location and power yielded no correlation. This is an avenue to look specifically at what is going on. Why did this specific dimension didn't have any correlation with wellness? This was a self-reported study, and so there are several limitations that could have happened with this. First, the aim for participants was 100 to 120. However, the final participant was 86. This was more than what G-Power recommended, which was 55. However, due to time constraints, I was able to get only 86. Also, this study didn't account for situational issues and contextual variables, such as the settings that people were working in when they were taking the survey. What was their mood? Were they hungry? What was their day looking like? It didn't account for any of those things. And then social desirability bias. Participants taking the test may rate themselves maybe higher or lower than they actually are. And then this is a correlational study, so it cannot infer causation. Although it can give some idea of the relationship, I cannot say that vicarious resilience causes counselor wellness. Now, so counselors do great work every day by providing services, by being a source of hope for individuals, families, and communities every day. And a study such as this can also provide a view that not only are counselors helping their clients, but the clients that we work with also give back to us in the way that when we see them thriving, it also helps us or benefits us internally as well. So this provides a starting point for a conversation, a paradigm shift, and also a new way for holding both trauma and resilience, not only for clients, but also counselors as well. So in conclusion, I would like to thank my fellow counselors in the field who dedicated their time to this survey, who dedicate their time every day to serving clients, to making a change, and also the clients that I serve every day. Thank you.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
It is our sincere pleasure to be among the first to call you and say congratulations and call you Dr. Alice Mills Mai. So,
Thank you.
Unanimous decision. We think you do great work.